Apparently I have a very excitable cat just over there, so I may get pounced on in the middle of this video. Hi everybody, it's Jade and welcome to the new year. There are multiple reasons why I haven't posted a video since my last video, which obviously also came after like a month and a bit's break. I'm not going to go into too much details, but let's just say that I had multiple events happen that made filming and editing and stuff videos very difficult, including breaking my phone and my computer in the same month, and also getting a concussion that has lasted for about 3 weeks. I still have a few of the symptoms, but we're mostly good. And that's all I'm gonna get into. I'm also getting slightly blinded from the light out there. I just hope it's not too Anyway, I have to get back into the flow of speaking to a camera because I feel like I'm slightly out of practice. Today's video is going to be a mixture of a 2022 wrap-up and a 2023 goals video. I'm not going to go into detail about all of the books I read in 2022 because I am in the process of making my top 10 and bottom 10 list of the books I read in 2022. So what I'm going to do instead is we're going to do a brief overview of the books I read and general ratings and stuff like that, because I've spoken about Goodreads before on this channel, but I use two apps to sort of track my reading. Goodreads being sort of the main one because I find the rating and the review section of that easier to use, and Storygraph being one that I started using probably about halfway through this year. I did backdate the books that I'd read this year, so the stats are still accurate, but the review stats are not, because reviewing on Storygraph is just, it's a bit of a pain. However, the thing I enjoy about Storygraph is that, as the name goes, it provides you with graphs, and I'm a nerd. So we're going to go through my reading stats for last year. They do almost a little bit like a Spotify wrapped kind of thing, but for books. So let's go to 2022. View your 2022 reading wrap up. There we go. So my goal for 2022 was to read 50 books. I ended up reading 65, with a total of 22,676 pages, which kind of is a little bit meaningless to me because it's more books than pages that I go for. The first book of the year that I read was Hagseed by Margaret Atwood, and the last book I read was The Trauma Cleaner by Sarah Krasnostein. I should know how to say that because I listened to it on audiobook and they said the name of the author, but one of the things I really enjoy is the fact that it gives you like month by month. Again, I'm not sure how accurate this was because I was backdating, but it looks like I read the most number of books and had the most pages read in the month of April, which I imagine is probably the month that I read To Paradise. But here we go. These are the things that we're interested in. The genres I read the most of, in order, are fantasy, young adult, LGBTQIA+, literary, and classics. The only one I'm like vaguely surprised about, well, not surprised, but would not normally happen, is the classics, because I was doing my Back to the Classics challenge, which I failed by like 2 books. But we're gonna ignore that. The longest book I read was To Paradise, which is not surprising. What is surprising is that it was only 708 pages long, because I was convinced that that tomb of a book was at least 1,000 pages long. Anyway, the shortest book I read was Hex by Ginny Fagan, which was only 112 pages. The average length of books that I read were about 345 pages, which, yeah, average. I average about 300 to 400 pages for the books that I read. And it says it took me on average 13 days to finish each book. Again, not entirely sure how accurate that is because I use Goodreads more often than Storygraph. There would be times where I would just forget to update my Storygraph and then would go back and be like, oh, I finished that one and that one and that one. The least time I spent was 0 days on reading Hagseed, which is false. That was because I got Storygraph in like February, so I'd already read Hagseed, so I added it and then added it to have read. But the longest book I spent reading was Dracula. I spent 190 days reading that, and that is specifically because the way I read Dracula was via Dracula Daily, which, if you don't know, is a website where you can sign up for free, completely for free. But because Dracula is written in the form of letters and diary entries, they're all dated, and they span a period of, I believe it's early September to late November. So what Daily Dracula does is it emails you the extracts on the day that they're referencing. So it takes you that long to read it because you're reading it slightly broken up. The authors I spent most time with were Alice Oseman. I read 4 of her books, reread 4 of her books because I read the 4 Heartstoppers. Alison Goodman, who I read 2 books, and I believe she's the one that wrote Eon and Iona, so I read that duology. And Taylor Jenkins Reid, who I discovered this year and fell in love with. We're going to skip the rating on Storygraph because, again, haven't actually rated that many books on here. The most popular book that I read was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Not really surprised, it was one of my favourite books. The least popular book I read was Pog by Padraig Kenny. Again, apologies, butchering the name. And the highest rated book I read was Heartstopper Volume 4. Again, not really surprised. And I successfully completed 1 reading challenge, which is accurate because I completed the Buzzword reading challenge. I managed to get all of those prompts. There were 12. I didn't do them 1 a month. I did double up a couple of times. Yes, so I got quite far in the Pop Sugar, the 50 book challenge. I mean, obviously I read more than 50 books, but I didn't read 50 that fitted those prompts. But didn't actually quite make it on the other 2 reading challenges that I had. So yes, that was my 2022 reading year. Oh, actually, no, I was gonna go with what my actual average rating for books was, because I have this little, I don't know how well you can see that, but this little bookshelf in my book notebook, I guess. This is the one where I put all of this is the notebook where I put all my reading challenges and things like that in. But I colour code it, this bookshelf, for what my rating was, and my average rating was 3 stars. Which I think is one of the reasons why I didn't read quite as many books this year as I did the year before, because I had just a sort of slump in the middle where everything was just kind of eh. I ended the year with 3 4-star books though, so that's not bad. So, on to the new year, on to 2023, and this year I have the same book goal as I did last year, 50 books, because I think that's a nice, not easy, but it's challenging enough that it will keep me reading, but not so challenging that I'm going to get stressed out, being like, I need to be reading all the time. And again, I've given myself 3 reading challenges, but they're not as difficult as, I guess, the ones I had last year. All 3 of the reading challenges that I've done this year are on Storygraph, because it's easy to keep track of them. First one is the January Pages Challenge, which is basically to read at least 1 page of a book every day in January, and update my progress via the app. So that's not going to be that difficult, and I think it's just going to get me in a good habit of reading every day, because I fell out of that mostly due to the concussion, because I couldn't actually focus on it. The second challenge that I've joined is the Storygraph Genre Challenge 2023. What I'm not going to do this year, which is I think it was one of the reasons I failed a bit last year, is I'm not going to choose all of the books for my challenge right at the start, because it got to the point where I had this massive collection of books on my you need to read these before the end of the year is out shelf, like in my little cart, which then just became way too daunting, and because I knew what I was going to be reading next, there was not that anticipation to, oh yes, I really want to read this. So whilst I've got these challenges, I'm going to try and do at least a prompt a month. I'm going to stick with how I used to do things, where I pick 5 books each month which gives me enough time to mood read around them whilst also fitting with the challenges that I've given myself. So at the end of this video, I'm going to pick my 5 books for January. Here we go. But anyway, so the Storygraph Genre Challenge just is, I think there are 10 prompts, and each prompt is a different genre or subgenre. And I've had a quick scroll through, and they all look like ones that, I'm quite wide in my genre picks anyway. So I will probably have at least one book on my shelf from these genres. But again, we're not going to go into the prompts specifically until I'm picking a book for them. The second one is one that I picked specifically because I've decided to... I don't know who came up with this idea. I know that I found out about it from watching Emmy's videos. She's doing... I don't know if she's still doing... Probably. The Round the World Challenge, which is basically to read a book from an author from every country in the world. And so I've written in my notebook, I've listed all of the countries in the world, and I've already filled in some where I've already read books from those, so I'm not necessarily doubling up. And then I found on Storygraph the Storygraph Reads the World Challenge, which is, as opposed to every single country in the world, is 10. But it'll give me something to focus on, so I'm not like looking through this where you've got like, I didn't even count, but like nearly 200 countries, I think, and just being like, oh my god, which one do I go for? So this one, the prompts are literally, they just give you the country. So like, for example, prompt number 1 of this is Argentina, which is also, I haven't read one from Argentina yet. But that's good, because it gives you, I really wanted to do that, the Round the World Challenge, because it gives you different perspectives, and I do want to read things from more countries. I realised as I was going through the list of countries and filling in books that I've already read, I have read maybe more countries than I thought I had. I mean, there's a lot, like I've got Australia already, I've got Germany, Ireland, Japan, Mexico, North Korea, Pakistan, Spain, Switzerland. Spain was a surprise because I did not realise that Meddling Kids, which I read at the end of 2022, was written by a Spaniard. The UK, I mean, I'm English, so it would be weird if I hadn't read anything from the UK. The United States, again, one of the biggest, easiest accessible medias, mostly come from the United States. Vietnam, and that's it, I believe, so far. So, yeah, so that's actually not that many countries considering the massive list I have. But, anywho. So those are my 2023 goals. I think they're definitely doable. Whereas I think even when I was saying the 3 book challenges I had last year, I was like, this is potentially going to be difficult. I mean, I found the classics one more difficult than the Pop Sugar Challenge, even though there were vastly more prompts in the Pop Sugar Challenge. That's because, well, classics are just slightly harder to get through, and a lot of the classics I have are big. And so reading one of those a month whilst also reading other books as well was just, I don't know why I'm making excuses. I didn't do it, so that's all it is. So now we're going to go, we're going to move locations. We're going to go into my office where my books are, and we're going to pick the 5 books I'm going to read for January. Hello. Okay, so, back in the office, and we're going to pick the 5 books that I want to read for January. The first one is an easy pick because it's actually the book club pick for this month, so that is Wild and Wicked Things by Francesca May. I'm already just over halfway through this, and I'm really enjoying it so far, actually. This is a, 1920s witch book. So basically, after the First World War, but the First World War in this case was sort of started by witchcraft, so magic and witches and everything are very much outlawed, and then we've got that mixture of that whole underground magic scene mixed with a bit of prohibition and swingers and stuff like that. It's given me like Great Gatsby but good vibes. Because I mean, if you watched my video last year, I did not enjoy The Great Gatsby. So, but I am enjoying this. So, let's have a look. Let's pick for the genre challenge. So we're gonna go with prompt number 2, which is no, not prompt number 2. Prompt number 4, which is a biography about someone you don't know much about. So the one I'm going to go for is... So I'm going to go for Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. It's been on my shelf for a while, and I picked this up mostly because I've heard it's really good. I really don't know that much about Trevor Noah. I think I've seen something that he's been in maybe once or twice. But I've heard that this is a really good read, so again, because I don't know much about him, I just know that this is about, I mean, it says stories from a South African childhood, so let's have a look on the back. Born a Crime is a reference to the fact that he was born of a mixed race couple in the middle of apartheid, so that in and of itself is enough to make me want to read it, really. So that is my genre pick. And let's have a look at the Reads the World challenge. This one's going to be harder because it's not always super obvious where they're from. I mean, that could be quite... I mean, I know Trevor Noah is lives in America now, but he was born in South Africa, so I'm pretty sure I can count this as prompt 8, South Africa. And that'll be that one. And I'm just going to fling it on the floor. Which means that I have 3, free picks. So, I'm just gonna go with whatever I want, I think. I might do some more, what's the word? I might do some more TBR games as the months go on, but for now, just to make it easy on myself to get a good start to the year, I'm just going to pick books that I want to read. Okay, so I've picked from 3 different shelves. Picked one from my historical fiction shelf, and I've gone for The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne, which is a book that is it set in Ireland or is it set in Scotland? I believe it's set in Scotland. Oh my god! I don't know why I didn't realise that John Boyne is the person who wrote The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas. Okay. Anyway, so The Heart's Invisible... For some reason, I'm really struggling to say that title. The Heart's Invisible Furies is set in Scotland, I believe, and it spans from 1945 to 2015, and is all about... I think it's a family, so you start with a mother who gets pregnant out of wedlock during the 1940s, where that's a really big deal, and so she gives up her child for adoption. I should have just read this. It's not Scotland, it's Dublin. Ireland, not Scotland. Sorry. So she gives up her child for adoption, and then you get the story of that child who grows up and is a gay man, I believe, in the 1980s. And I've heard a lot of my friends have read this and have just raved about it. And considering that one of the friends who has highly recommended this book to me doesn't like reading historical fiction or literary fiction, really. She mostly reads horrors and thrillers. That was a glowing review for someone who just doesn't like this genre. So I'm like, yes. So we're going to start this with a book that I think is going, in terms of tone, is going to be similar to A Little Life and My Dark Vanessa kind of thing. But I think from what I've learned about myself is that that's kind of the genre that I really enjoy living in. The next one I picked up was from my just general literary fiction shelf. So I chose Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. This is apparently, I think this is supposed to be another quite hard read. So I've decided to have a really happy January, apparently. And it's another teenage pregnancy and it's another book that spans from this one spans from 1921 to 2001, and yeah, unfurling the history of Melody's family. So the main character is Melody, who is the teenager who gets pregnant. From the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre to post 9/11 New York. So yeah, that sounds like it's going to be a tense read, but I've heard good things about this one as well. And the last one I picked, I just sort of went down this shelf. I didn't really like explore further on because I was just like, we're just gonna see which ones tickle my fancy, and I picked this from my thriller/horror shelf because I managed to. I had a rejig of my shelves because I bought a bunch of new books and ran out of space. So I now just have a thriller shelf and a horror shelf over there, which is sharing with my mythology retelling books. You do what you can when you have limited space. Anywho, next one I picked is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danford. I love this cover so much. It's so gaudy. Like, I've been looking for this for a while, and I managed to spot it in the bookshop because it's so. I was like, I bet that's yes, it is. Just glaring. Anyway, so this is a thriller. I think it's just a thriller. I don't think it's a horror thriller. Set in a all-girls school where there was a massacre that happened, and then a film crew come back to this school that I believe has been closed down at this point. Yes. So it closed down after the massacre, and so a film crew have come back to there to film a movie about that massacre, and then I believe things start happening again. So, I mean, it's about a horror movie, so maybe it is more of a horror book. I don't know. We'll find out when I read it. So that is my January TBR. It's a decent stack of books. So I didn't pick too many skinny books. So, but they're all ones that I've been dying to read. Anyway, so we're gonna get back into it. Start the year hopefully on a good note, and yes. I also now need to check where the authors of these books are from, just in case. You never know. Anyway, so yep, that's it for this video so far. How was your guys' 2022? Did you hit your reading goals? Did you not? I mean, no biggie if you didn't. If you read one book last year, that's still awesome. What were your favourite books from last year? I mean, probably a better question for me to ask in my top 10. What are you excited about reading this year? Are you excited about reading this year, or have you decided that you're just not going to stress it and you're just going to read as and when you feel like it, both of which are completely valid things to do? How do I finish these videos? Really falling out of the oh, Jesus Christ. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and maybe subscribing if you want to see more from me. Want to see if I actually managed to hit my reading challenges this year. As always, be kind to yourself and be kind to others, and I will see you in the next video.